Hi there, Andy Bell from Andy Bell Photography, here to show you the latest version of Dxo Photo Lab version 4 out today, and comparing it with Luminar version 4, the latest version of Luminar. And for the purpose of this demo and test, I've selected this picture that I took back in 2014 up in the UK Lake District. It's a picture that's done pretty well, it's sold well, but in its raw version there's a few things that need fixing. There's a color cast, you can see the clouds at the top here are a bit blown, and it's a little bit soft. If we just zoom in to 100%, we can see that there's a softness to it. It's actually a sharp picture, but like so many raw pictures, it needs a little bit of work. So what we're going to do is take it into Dxo Photo Lab firstly, and we'll edit it in that, and then we'll take it further from there. So on opening it up in Dxo Photo Lab, as it's the first time I've used it, it's recognised a camera and lens combination that it hasn't got a module downloaded for. This only happens the first time for any camera and lens combination that you're using. And it's recognised that I've used in this picture a Samsung NX300 plus its 30mm lens, so we just need to download and install that module, which is now done. Right, I've just clicked the reset button, so we're getting the image as it was taken, although Dxo has applied a couple of corrections automatically. If we go to the detail tab, it's applied chromatic aberration correction and its unique lens sharpness correction, where it knows about the combination of your camera and lens and it corrects the sharpness according to where it's softer in the image. If you go to opticallimits.com, you'll see that they actually do test lenses on different cameras, because different camera bodies respond to lenses differently, and the amount of sharpness and vignetting and distortion differs from camera body to camera body. So Dxo are onto something here by doing that. Now the first thing we can notice about this particular image is that it's actually got quite a nasty color cast. So if we go to the section in Dxo which deals with white balance, you can see at the moment it's on as shot, and if I remember rightly I shot this on automatic white balance, and this is taken with a Samsung NX300, lovely little camera, but its auto white balance wasn't very good on days like this with a lot of cloud. There's actually a lot of blue light coming through the clouds, and it's got a bit of almost a magenta-y cast. I could try taking it down to cloudy. That certainly has improved it a lot. It's taken that magenta out, but often it's better to just pick a neutral area in the picture and get the proper white balance. And I'm thinking this area of cloud is quite good for that. Yeah, that's what we wanted it to look like. It's brought back how it looked when I was in that particular area. So we can see immediately that Dxo has improved the image. Now if I click the compare button, we can see the changes that Dxo is going to make quite easily. So you can see the distortion correction and the white balance correction. Let's go back to looking at the light, and we can see there's a few features that Dxo has that are unique to it. Firstly, it's smart lighting. Now, at the moment it's on slight, and to be honest it doesn't do much. If I turn it on or turn it off, then turn it back on, there's no major difference. And in this image we're looking really to improve the highlights in the clouds, so I can put it onto strong, and there's just a little touch of improvement in those highlights. So Dxo is doing a good job. It's not overdoing the highlight recovery. I can certainly instruct it to try to recover more, but its smart lighting is helping the situation. It's improving the color and light balance in the image. So what we'll now do is try to bring out a bit more detail from these overexposed highlights. and for that we can use the exposure compensation. I'm just going to try highlight priority slight, and yeah, that's improved the sky. I don't think we'll be able to pull everything back in there because that is completely burnt out, but it doesn't matter too much because that's how the sun was looking, and I'm happy for it to have that bright patch in there. Let's now see what this Clear View Plus can do. At the moment it's on a very slight setting. I can turn it right off so you can see the difference it's making. Put it up to about 50, then you see much bigger change. We turn it off, turn it back on. Well, we can see that it's dramatically improved the view of the clouds. It's removed a lot of the haze from the mountains. It's now beginning to look like quite a decent picture. So this Clear View Plus is unique to Dxo, and it's extremely powerful, extremely easy to use. It's one of the sliders that it has that competes with the AI sliders in Luminar, which we'll see later, and it certainly gives a big difference to the image with very little work. Now let's look at some of the colour adjustments that Dxo can do. Say I want to perhaps saturate the grass in the middle of the valley a little bit. I can go to colour, and what I want to do is just pick these green colours. I could pick from the presets here, but I can also now use this hue picker, and I can say, yeah, about that colour, and it's made a nice fairly wide selection of colours that meet the one I've just clicked, and now I can push the saturation of them up a bit, and that's actually looking very nice, so we'll leave that in. So it's a very simple to pick the colour I wanted and then adjust the sliders accordingly. Now I want to finally show you Dxo's local adjustments. It has a very unique way of applying them. Firstly, we go to the local adjustments panel and we pick the local adjustment tool, and if we right click, we've got lots of different ways that we can apply an adjustment. We can paint on a mask, or we can put a graduated filter on, or we can use these control points. That's what I'm going to use, and we just click wherever we want to select, and we end up selecting an area, and we can look at the mask by pressing M, and the light areas are going to get the adjustment, the darker areas won't. Now it might be that I'm thinking it's going to affect the mountain too much, so I can hold down the Alt key and I can add a mask which will protect the area that it covers. So this control point now will stop the mountain from being affected by what I'm about to do to the selected part of the image. So just put those in, and if we go back and look at the mask, so we can see it's mainly this area of the sky that's going to be affected. What do I want to do? Well, I've got options of adjusting the exposure, contrast, micro contrast, the amount of clear view, so we can put that Clear View Plus tool into operation on just selected parts of the image, and highlights, midtones, shadows, and the black parts of the image. I just want to reduce the exposure in the sky. I want to make the sky look stormier. Having done that, we can come away from there, and we can see now that the sky's got more drama in it than it had before. So if we go to the comparison, that's how we started, that's how we've ended up. I think you'll agree that that is a dramatically better looking picture. All that remains now is to save the picture. I'm going to bring into view the image browser, which has got this export to disk option, and as you can see, there's all the usual export options. Export as TIFF is what I'm going to go for. I'll put it onto the original folder that it came from, and I'll just suffix it as Dxo so that I'll recognise this is the one that Dxo processed. All we have to do is click export, and it will go and do the raw conversion. So it's just a case of waiting for it to complete the work now. Well, we've seen Dxo in action, so now let's send this over to Luminar and see how it copes with this picture. The first thing we do in Luminar is go to its canvas tab, where we can apply its lens corrections. So it deals with the distortion, chromatic aberrations and defringes, so it removes any blemishes from the picture. As I say, it's auto distortion. It's probably not as powerful as Dxo's. A picture like this, it doesn't really matter anyway, whereas Dxo will provide a lens specific distortion correction that is matched to the camera. Luminar is a little bit more generic, but it works pretty well. So we go to the light or essentials tab, and if you remember with the Dxo version we're very concerned about the color cast. Well, we can correct that in Luminar, and Luminar offers very much the same settings as Dxo, so we can pick various settings like cloudy, which again warms it up a bit, or we can use the color picker as we did before, pick about the same area, and it has pretty much the same result as Dxo in correcting the white balance. Luminar has a different approach to Dxo when it comes to editing the image, has a number of these AI tools, or artificial intelligence tools, which do a lot of the work for you with very little effort on our part. So if we want to improve the general picture, a little bit like Dxo's clear view, we can use the AI accent. Go about halfway, you can see the image improving as we drag it across, and it is actually a very well written tool because it looks good just about the whole way to 100%, so it doesn't over process the image. So we can adjust it until we like the look of it, and that adjusts the whole image, but we can also adjust the sky, and that slider just focuses on the sky itself rather than the whole of the image. And its approach to seeing before and after is the split screen approach, so we can drag the slider across and see the changes. You can see it's a good looking result. Now, whereas Dxo provides the lens based sharpness, Luminar uses a structure tool, which I often put on about between 10 and 20 is normally sufficient. And then when we get to the color adjustments, go to the advanced settings, it's got as the same as Dxo had. You can select a particular hue. What it doesn't have is Dxo's advanced way of just clicking in the image to get the hue you want. So if we're going to be looking at changing and enhancing the grass again, we're going to be picking somewhere between the yellow and the green. So take the yellow first and saturate that, and maybe the green as well, and we can turn that setting off and then turn it back on to see the change it's made. It's just added a nice little adjustment to the image. There are other settings that we can pick. Black and white conversion is obviously not suitable for this image. The details enhancer, again, I just tend to, with Luminar, just add a little bit of detail. See, we need to go up to 100% to see the difference that makes, and we can get to see the difference by switching the effect off and then switching it back on again. It's barely discernible, but it just makes a subtle difference. There's no noise in the image, so we don't need to use that. What I do find very usable is the landscape enhancer. We'll go back to viewing the whole image, and one of its nicest settings is this golden hour. It's a kind of a warmth setting that looks quite natural. This is one where you can definitely go too far with it, but giving it a small amount of the golden hour setting, we compare off and on, just gives the image a touch of warmth. The dehaze, sometimes I find it useful, sometimes I find I don't make use of it. It just again gives the image a little bit more crispness. A unique palette within Luminar is this creative, where we can do things like replace the sky. Just take that off, and so we can look at the sky replacement. I'll just show you one. There is of course a question over whether it's still a photograph or not if you do replace the sky. I'll replace it with the dramatic sky. It comes with a number of presets. You can buy extras and add your own. So there it is, it's replaced the sky. I prefer the original sky, but what you have to say is that it's replaced the sky very well. We go to 100%. I'll just wait for it to finish processing the image. You can see that it's put the sky correctly in the right place, and it hasn't overlapped at all from the horizon. And as this is quite a complicated horizon, I have to say it's done a good job on that. But for this particular image, I'm just going to stick with the original sky, and to do that we just turn the effect off. There are other sky enhancement tools. You can augment the sky by putting things on it like birds, adding extra clouds, fireworks and lightning. We'll leave it as it is. As I said, there is a question over whether it remains a photograph when you do things like that, but I guess it really is up to a person's individual taste and feelings on the matter. This tab in Luminar is to do with portraiture enhancement. Obviously there's nothing to show you here on this particular image, but it has a lot of good features, removing skin defects and enhancing portraits. And to be honest, there's most of the tools that you would get in a dedicated package for portrait enhancement are built into Luminar, so that's a real plus for Luminar. And finally, the Pro setting. The advanced contrast is very useful. I'll show you what happens if I just work with the highlights. You can bring the brightness in the sky down a little, and the same with the midtones. We can adjust the contrast in those. I think in this particular image it doesn't need much of those. I don't normally use the shadow contrast as it tends to wash the shadows out. So Luminar has now produced this picture for us. So what I'm going to do again is to save that, and to do that with Luminar you right click and you say export, and then you can save it again to various image types. So I'm going to save this one as a TIFF, and I'll put it into the same folder as the image so that we can then compare them, the two results between Luminar and Dxo Photo Lab 4. Right, so Luminar's finished its processing. We'll just compare the two results. So if I select both images, then compare, we'll go up to about 100% and have a look. Initially you can see that the Luminar version on the right here is a bit brighter than the Dxo version. That could have been just a difference in the adjustment settings. Certainly Dxo could produce a brighter picture. You just look at them side by side like this, we can see that there are differences, but they're both very acceptable pictures. The clouds are a little more yellowy in the Luminar version. Again, that could be just the way I've set the settings. It's more interesting if we zoom in, if we go up to 100% and then look at the detail. I can certainly see on my screen, I don't know how it's coming out on the video, but the Luminar version here is not as sharp as the Dxo version. Again, this is where Dxo's initial sharpening is very, very hard to beat, and it's very hard to get a raw development sharpening setting that is right, and Dxo just gets it right, not too much and not too little. We can zoom in a bit further, go up to about just over 200%, and it's more apparent there that the Dxo version is sharper than the Luminar version. Now in reality, after further post-processing, it's probably not going to show that much, but as I said, or as I say on my blog, if you want the cleanest and sharpest images, then Dxo is the way to convert your raw pictures. If you want creative, then Luminar has things that nothing else has, but they've both produced a different but perfectly acceptable, perfectly usable result. Which one would I recommend? Well, quite honestly, I'd recommend both. They both have their strengths. They don't have any discernible weaknesses. I'd say that Dxo is a slicker product in that it's more responsive. It doesn't have any issues with freezing or with crashing. Luminar sometimes has some issues with stability, and Luminar certainly is not as fast as Dxo in actual usage. When it comes to raw processing, they both take their time because they both have a lot to do, but when it comes to the actual user experience, then Dxo has an edge. As to the results, well, it's entirely a matter of taste. I think both can produce excellent results. If you want to go down the route of replacing skies and doing artistic things, then Luminar is the better option. If you want the purest of raw conversions and the sharpest result before you start going into tools like Topaz Sharpen AI to finish the sharpening process, then there's certainly no question that Dxo is the better product. So that concludes my comparison of the two, and hopefully you've enjoyed this video. There's a full write-up on Dxo Photo Lab 4 on my blog. That's andybellphotography.com/blog, and it's the current post that's just been released today that shows all of the different features that Dxo Photo Lab has.